Tell me more is my favorite, but there's another one. Help me understand. When you're talking and you want to get a little bit more feedback from somebody, I actually stop and I say, hey, I've been talking for a little bit. What do you think so far? And that really just disarms them. It's more than word choice. How well a team collaborates can make or break your company. It requires active listening, open-mindedness, and the ability to work towards a common goal. When a team collaborates effectively, they leverage their unique strengths and perspectives to generate innovative ideas and overcome challenges. On the other hand, poor collaboration can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and even politics that get in the way of achieving your common goals. Welcome to the morebusiness.com podcast. I'm your host, Raj Khera. Mr. More Business, thanks for joining me. Dr. Jeff Kaplan is here with us today.
Hi, Raj. Great to see you.
Today, we're going to be talking about groups and teams inside a corporation. And at first glance, it might sound like it's the same thing, but they're really different. And there's a lot of nuances that make an impact on whether a company is going to be successful in motivating employees and also just in their overall growth. So could you define for me, what's the difference between just having a group inside your company and having a team?
So a group is a bunch of individuals coming together. That's a group. So when you think of a group, think of a wrestling team, right? So wrestling team is a group, but individual metrics are rewarded, right? So I wrestled in high school. My success certainly impacted the team score, but we were all doing individual efforts and measured individually. That's a group.
Yeah.
A team is much more like a soccer team or a basketball team, right? Where we're all, I'm passing to you, you're passing back to me, right? So we are collectively towards a single goal. So when you think in organizations, if you're a team, right, the way that you are measured is the same. We're following the same measurement. We have a collective goal rather than individual goals, right? And hopefully we have collective agreements about how we're going to operate as a team. Does that make sense?
I can already think of several CEOs that I know that struggle with that definition because they think they have a team, but when you explain it that way, they really just have a group of people that are trying to. It's hyper political inside the company. Everybody's got their own agenda, and they are not passing the ball because everybody's trying to get credit. Everybody's trying to cover their backs, and so. How can an executive spot this in an organization? I mean, to some degree, I think they should have some emotional intelligence to be able to spot it, but not everybody can. And so what are some processes or things that people can do to see whether they've just got a group and how can they then coalesce that group?
Well, first is ask, are we all heading towards a particular agenda? I'll give you an example. So I was brought in to do team coaching. So it was like, hey, I'd like you to coach my team, right? From the senior leader. Okay, sounds great. Let's do it. What are the objectives? What do you think? So obviously I gave a team assessment and asked them about the culture and productivity. But I'm like, but what do you think is going on? And well, we all like each other, but there's really no healthy conflict. When you unpack it further, two of the people on his team don't actually even report directly to him. And as you might guess, they were the quietest members of the team during group interactions. And so different subjects would come up and you would notice that not everybody is contributing and not necessarily everybody is impacted by that particular topic. Now, so one of the questions I had is, are you really a team or are you a group? And in order to really assess that, you need to sort of unpack it. And is the success of what we're up to dependent on us collectively as a team, or should we just be a bunch of individuals doing our thing and then coming together? I would argue real quick that if you are a senior team, ideally you should be operating as a team and align goals and metrics so that you're all heading towards the same path.
One of the biggest problems I see in so many companies is in marketing and sales. And a lot of times people think that there's just this handoff. I actually had one CEO that felt that marketing should actually report into sales, which basically to me meant, well, you don't really understand marketing because you're looking at marketing as just a sales mechanism. And it's not. There's so much more depth to it in creating the brand and awareness and actually creating an environment where leads just start to flow in. Where sales, it's much more targeted. And so what happens in a company like that is the structure that was set up by the executive management just makes the rest of the company fall apart. Things just fail because of the way the structure is set up. And they're thinking, no, we got a team. We got a team. But when you look at the underlying things that are going on, marketing's thinking, well, we got to generate a whole bunch of leads. Okay, here's a bunch of leads. Sales looks at them. These leads are terrible. We can't use these leads. You're not generating any high quality leads. So they're both pointing fingers at each other. Marketing is saying over to sales, why aren't you closing the deals? We've given you so many leads. And sales just keeps pointing back, these aren't any good leads. And there's just the wires are just completely crossed. And meanwhile, sales are slow. Everybody's upset. Somebody gets fired because, the CEO thinks they're not doing their job. And then they hire someone else, and it's basically a revolving door. Same thing happens again. It's the structure.
Yeah. So marketing sales is a great example because it's what organization do you know where sales is not mad at marketing and marketing is not mad at sales?
So common.
I worked with a leader in a large sports and apparel organization, and my guy was in charge of the brand, their own internal brand. And yet his boss had no real experience there and was much more excited and interested about the big players of the other brands that was bringing in the money. And you can imagine all the conflicts, right? This organization, in order for them to survive, was going to need to build out his area. And I interviewed one of the senior leaders who said, yeah, I know we need to do it. But the problem was that for the next 5 years, they could get away with it. They would have slipping margins. But as these brands could sell themselves, it's a lot to invest in this internal thing. What they needed to do was not just invest in my guy's area, but to align incentive structure so that our bonuses, quite frankly, are all tied to the bottom line, not to your bottom line and your bottom line, but to the bottom line. To your marketing and sales, same thing.
Yeah, that's what I've seen that works in companies that really have that together. There's no, the word I've heard this explained really eloquently. So there's no actual handoff. It's a seamless thing that's just a flow that goes back and forth. So sales might actually be, boots on the ground closing the deals, but when they need something, marketing is there to provide that kind of support. And then marketing knows exactly the kind of sales leads that, are needed. And they do all kinds of things to help with, the technical, I guess the modern name for it is called account-based marketing, ABM. But, it's basically a way for you to get into a company, start expanding your accounts. And that really has to be a synergistic play. It can't be one group inside your company. I'm using the word group because that's what it was, is effectively at that point, not a team. And what you really want is those teams to really work together and not be in isolation. So, how would someone recognize that that's the problem and it's not, I just made a bad hire?
Well, is there a lot of infighting? Is there a lot of, infighting within the team or group? Is there fighting, meaning poor collaboration, poor communication, lots of blaming happening from these members to other members, right? Anytime you see that, a lot of blaming and breakdowns of communication, collaboration, one of the first places you check for is alignment. Are we all being rewarded on the same goal? And look, the reality is maybe you should be operating as a group, or maybe you should be breaking apart the individuals and these people should be a team and these are groups. But then you still need to work on improving communication and collaboration among all the different players towards meeting the same objective.
Yeah. And so accountability, how do you put accountability into, let me rephrase that. Is accountability, the way you've set up accountability, an indicator, whether you got a group or a team, and how you can make that transformation?
The way you set up accountability, an indicator of a team or group, quite frankly, to be honest, most leaders fail miserably at accountability. That is actually one of the biggest reasons that a coach is brought in to work on a team. They're not holding their members accountable, their team members, much less the team members holding each other accountable. right? Particularly, oh, we love each other. We don't want to,
make waves.
yeah, like upset you. Yes,
Yeah.
everybody says yes to everything. Yeah, we'll do that. And then the people below, like, oh my gosh, like, could you please stop pouring all this stuff, and focus.
One of my very first jobs, I was actually at an agency where everything had to be rosy, because if for any reason there was a hint of failure in any activity, all hell would break loose. And just people, just like the management, like, well, what do we do that for, and all that. There was the reward for trying new things and being okay to fail was just non-existent at this agency. And boy, that was a tough, luckily the group that I was part of, I would say that was actually more like a team. The team that I was part of, the manager was really good. He insulated us from a lot of that. This was, I think, my first job out of college as an engineer. So, boy, I don't think the management would ever understand, like you wouldn't be able to penetrate it. So what do you do? Like if you're working inside a company like that, you just leave, you go to a different company? I mean, what are the options?
Well, the company itself is probably not going to survive very long, particularly in this highly competitive environment, right? So if you're strangling innovation, that is a good formula for future failure.
Yeah, that's something people really got to pay attention to. So the difference between groups and teams is teams actually work together for a common goal, whereas groups have people inside an organization that sort of have their own agenda, own goals, and are not really aligned together.
In the team, everyone is interdependent on each other. So system forces the communication and collaboration. And like if you're just observing, you can observe any team meeting, and you'll know if it's a group or a team, if they're operating as a group or a team, right? Is everybody participating? Are the topics ones that everyone needs to have input on, right? And again, there might be topics, discussion that not everybody needs to be present. Then that's fine. That's like a little subcommittee. These three people go off and like work on that and then bring it back, to the larger group.
When you look at this in terms of meetings, so I'm going to pivot just a little bit to just organizational structure and keeping progress happening. How often do teams and do groups meet and just not have productive meetings? I mean, like, is there a difference inside a team meeting that you can use to spot, identify, and help change?
Right. So it depends on the organization. A lot of times, once a week is pretty common, but oftentimes they're different. They're different. How do I put it? There's like this part of the team meets, once a week, and then this team meets once a week where it has other folks. There's a sick that large organizations have 30% more teams than employees. Think about that.
Large organizations have 30% more teams than employees. So every employee is part of like 1.3
multiple teams. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a recent statistic. There's an older statistic that says basically 50% of meetings don't need to happen. And then of those, 50% of those are terrible, right? Unproductive. Yeah. So that's 25% of meetings that are actually productive. Every time I talk about that, everybody nods their head yes.
I think everybody can relate to the whole death by meeting concept where, we're meeting today. What are we even talking about? There's no agenda. There's no action plan after you're done with a meeting. It's just we met to spin cycles, and that's it. And some of these meetings are extraordinarily expensive, especially when you've got executive team members. I know that there's some companies that have, like you have to have meetings. Like the whole group needs to meet at some point, to get together. But I think if you don't have an agenda, and by 15 minutes before the meeting's up, you don't have a plan to get to your action items and who's going to do what for accountability, I think you've wasted a lot of time.
And frustration. And are you getting all the voices being heard? Are we clear where we're trying to get to? I mean, here's what I would suggest. Anybody listening to this who runs teams, right, like is a leader of a team, tell the group that you get the group or team, whatever it is, that you're going to meet, and you want everybody to come to that next meeting being prepared. You're going to spend 2 hours, whatever, on, which I know is expensive, but it's important, what's working, what's not working, and suggestions to improve communication and improve collaboration, improve performance, improve climate, right? So how can we get the job done more effectively and efficiently And how can we do it in a way that raises work satisfaction? Or hire a coach to do a team assessment and then maybe do an offsite and talk about what came out of the team assessment, right? There's a lot of things that can be done, but just start off by being curious and asking the question.
That word curious, I think, goes so far. It's not really just for business, honestly. It's like it's a life thing. I was just listening to, I think, one of the podcasts by Simon Sinek, great podcasts, by the way. And he was talking about the more curious you are, you have just a much more fulfilling life. And when you start doing that inside your business and just being curious about what you can improve and constantly tweak things, and really be open to listening, because I know a lot of people go through the motions of asking and they get input and they don't listen. And then that demotivates the staff. So the next time they get asked, they're like, it's not going to, why bother? It's not going to get listened to anyway. So I think really just closing your mouth and actually listening to what people are saying is so important.
Yeah, listen to deeply understand. Listen to what the person's saying, what they're not saying, and what they're trying to say, but can't. So rather than cutting them off and telling them how wrong they are, ask them these non-attached, curious questions to help them get clear what they're trying to say.
That's a really important concept, because sometimes you just can't articulate what you're saying. It's ready to come out.
Right.
It's on the tip of your tongue, but you just need that little extra help to get it out. And sometimes the manager always gets frustrated. Well, just say it. Just say it. What are you trying to say? And I think if they just took a step back, like you said, and just help them articulate it, what kind of questions can you to help somebody bring out what they're really trying to say?
Here's what I learned. So when I was in college, my senior year, I took a class by Edison Trickett, who I had great respect for. And I learned a phrase from him: tell me more, tell me more. So when somebody says something, rather than evaluating how ridiculous that comment was, say, tell me more. And then they're going to sound a little better. And then just say, tell me more. And then maybe say, what I heard you say was X. Is that correct? Right? So paraphrase or repeat, and then ask for clarity. And Raj, it starts with just having, a genuine desire to partner with this other person and truly collaborate towards finding solutions and making decisions and solving problems, right? Rather than needing to prove I'm so much smarter than you, or I'm better than you, or whatever. Check your ego at the door and create this space to have a deeper conversation.
So that phrase, tell me more, is very commonly used in sales teams also, to get sales when you're trying to get a prospect when you're doing what they call discovery for product needs. That's the line. By the way, there are multiple variations that I've used. So tell me more is my favorite also. But there's another one, help me understand. And then, just like continue on phrasing with that. There's another one, like when you're talking and you want to get a little bit more feedback from somebody, I actually stop and I say, hey, I've been talking for a little bit. What do you think so far? And that really just disarms them too. In fact, quite frankly, I use that on my product demos. Oh my God, that is the best line for product demos. I've seen so many pitches where somebody just, they're talking. And like 15 minutes go by, the customer hasn't even had a chance to say anything. Really, if you just took a timeout, like 2 minutes into your pitch, and just say, hey, I've just shared a little bit of this stuff. What do you think so far? Oh my gosh. People just reveal everything.
Yeah, they reveal it. Well, yeah. And, a couple of days ago, I was coaching somebody, and he's one of those people that says, yeah. And I'm going, yeah. And I said, okay, you just said yeah a lot. What did I just say? And he was like, well, you said this and then this. I'm like, well, I said this, but this, you missed the second one. And then I said, you aren't listening. And that's exactly what you do with your employees. The topic was developing his reports. He feels like they're incompetent. They're not. He's not able to develop them. And listening, by the way, was one of the topics he wanted to focus on. And I said, it's what you do with your wife. And so he started doing it again. He's like, yeah. I said, you're doing it right now. And then he's just like, and now I'm like, okay, now this is funny because now you can't even talk, right? Because it's like now you're so worried that I'm going to sit there and tell you you're saying yeah again. He said, I'm getting emotional. He said, And like, I feel like, oh my God, I've been such a, and he was basically alluding to like a bad manager and a bad husband. And I'm like, basically, okay, get over it. I didn't say that, but like, I get it. Like I said, look, this moment is a defining moment for you. This is a defining moment for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is about you having this deep awareness about how you've not been listening, how you've been coming across, how you rush conversation because you're already 3 steps ahead, right? And so now you get to do things differently. When we talk about teams and we talk about groups, whether it's a team or a group, it's all about working together to try to truly, deeply understand, not try to talk over or be understood, but to understand and then collectively reach your common objective.
I like that your client actually got emotional. Those are the biggest breakthroughs. And I think sometimes people who are being coached, I've had a professional coach for over a dozen years, and it's really helped me to blossom as a person, I think, too, not just as a manager. And I remember there are times where, you shed a tear or two. You remember those the most, first of all, but that's the moment of growth. And that's really what helps shape your future. We don't remember what people said, but we remember how we felt. Yeah. When you're able to connect your left brain and your right brain, when you're able to feel the message, feel the discovery, wow, like you won't forget that, right? And that leads to transformative behavior. It does. Jeff, thank you. I think we've gone a lot deeper than just the high level. What's the definition of a group? What's the definition of a team? But I think anyone listening can use this as a launching pad to really help improve your team's performance so that you get the outcomes that you want. Thanks again, Jeff. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Raj. Thanks.